We're heading over now to Queen's Park for questions period. Take a listen.
I'm feeling the weight of the important role that we in the official opposition have in this province. A lot of people are counting on us. People are struggling. People aren't voting because they've been told over and over again by this government and governments before them that this is as good as it gets, that this is all they can expect. When a government as rich and powerful as this one makes decisions that favor developers over farmers, shareholders over sick people, we have a problem. To the Premier, since this House rose, more concerns have been raised about his relationship with developers profiting from his Greenbelt carve-up and their attendance at family events. Can the Premier explain to Ontarians how they are supposed to believe that these developers weren't given a heads-up about his plans for the Greenbelt?
Members, please take their seats. The Premier.
Well, first of all, I welcome the first question from the Leader of the Opposition. Regarding any family matters, my family is separate than the political process. They aren't involved. I had an opportunity to speak to the Integrity Commissioner, Mr. Speaker. I asked him for his opinion, and he found there was no violation. Again, this event was cleared by the Integrity Commissioner.
The supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I want to be clear. This is not about the Premier's family. It is about the Premier's behaviour. It's about accountability and the integrity of the office that he holds. Sources told reporters they felt pressured to attend, and some were asked for additional donations of up to $1,000. Did anyone in the Premier's office or any other government staff have a role in making the invitation list for this family fundraiser?
Reply, the Government House Leader.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I think the Premier has already responded to that, and as the Commissioner also responded to that, Mr. Speaker. But at the same time, we are continuing to move forward as a government to ensure that we continue to build a strong, prosperous Ontario, and it is seen throughout the province of Ontario. Whether you travel to the north, the south, east, and the west, the province of Ontario is moving in a very good direction. We are seeing thousands of jobs being created, Mr. Speaker. We are seeing investments come back to the province of Ontario. That is what we continue to fight for, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we're also fighting to ensure that young families can afford to get their first home, something that almost everybody in this place has enjoyed. Reasons why families and people came to this province, to this country for generations, Mr. Speaker, is because they wanted the dignity and the hope and the optimism that they could also enjoy that first home. And we are going to do everything in our power to make sure that all Ontarians can enjoy that type of optimism and success for the future, Mr. Speaker.
The final supplementary.
Speaker, it really should not be too much to ask for the Premier of this province to answer the questions that Ontarians have. Again, right. Well, the Premier has a close relationship with developers. We know that. He's acknowledged it. But when the guest list for a family event includes the very developers who later benefited from this government's MZOs and Greenbelt sale, something doesn't sit right. The government has a history of very specific land decisions that somehow end up benefiting their friends and their donors. Does the Premier understand how bad this looks? Not just for the Premier, but for the integrity of his government.
Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I think, again, both the Commissioner has responded as well as the Premier, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we are making decisions that will put more of the valuable resources of the province of Ontario available for families, for young Canadians who want to be able to buy that first home. But we didn't just start last week. We started from 2018, Mr. Speaker, and at every step of the way, the opposition has been opposed to that. When we brought on transit-oriented communities to build housing around the transit infrastructure, which, by the way, Mr. Speaker, is the largest investment in transit in the history of this province, if not the country, Mr. Speaker. We brought in rules to build transit-oriented communities They voted against it, Mr. Speaker, so it is no surprise that they are against building more homes for people. It is that hope and optimism that we have been fighting for since we were elected, since the Progressive Conservative government was even formed.
Response.
We knew that the people of this province wanted a prosperous province, but they also wanted the hope and dignity of having their first home, and we are going to do everything in our power to make sure that that is affordable for everybody.
Thank you. The next question. Once again, the Leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, you want affordable housing? Don't build luxury urban sprawl. Let's start there. Speaker, the government doesn't like it because they know that their integrity is in question. And the Premier doesn't like to answer questions because he knows where it leads. On Friday, the Public Order Emergency Commission published their report on the use of the Emergencies Act, and the findings are very distressing. When Ottawa residents were being harassed in their communities last February, while small businesses were being forced to close, the Premier, the Solicitor General, the Minister of Transportation all chose not to help. In fact, it was only when protests moved to other parts of this province that they were forced to do something. What does the Premier have to say to Ottawa residents now that we know the extent of his government's failure to act?
Government House Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think what the report did highlight is the important work that was being done by the OPP for many months leading up to that, Mr. Speaker. And of course, where there are lessons to be learned with respect to better coordination between our whether it's the Parliamentary Protective Service, the OPP, the RCMP, and in this instance, the Ottawa Police Service will do that. But, Mr. Speaker, we are moving forward and we are looking ahead. We are building an economy that is stronger coming out of COVID than it was before, Mr. Speaker. That is what we are continuing to focus on. Whether it's the thousands of jobs and billions of dollars investments that the Premier and the Minister of Economic Development have brought to this province, Mr. Speaker, whether it is the groundbreaking transit system that the Minister of Transportation is bringing on, the Minister of Infrastructure, who is bringing, for the first time, broadband services to the entire province. And you know what that means, Mr. Speaker? That means that every part of this province, north, south, east, and west, can participate in the economic advantage that Ontario used to have, that was lost under the Liberals, but that we are rebuilding. That's what we're doing, Mr. Speaker.
The supplementary question.
Well, no answers there. No answers there. Speaker, witnesses told the Commission that this government was, and I quote, trying to avoid responsibility for a crisis within its borders. While federal and municipal officials were meeting regularly to try and navigate this crisis, Ontario's Premier and the ministers responsible ghosted the people of Ottawa. The report's chapter on the provincial response is actually titled Ontario's Absence. Why was the Premier absent? And I really hope the Premier will answer this question. For the people of Ontario and the people of Ottawa, why was the Premier absent when the people of Ottawa needed his help?
Members will please take their seats. Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I think the report is very clear that the OPP had resources on the ground for many months in advance of this, and we're sharing information with police services, not only in Ottawa but across the province. But as I said, if there are lessons to be learned with respect to better coordination of emergency services on the ground in Ottawa and how they communicate, we will take a look at that. But we are moving forward, Mr. Speaker. We are moving beyond COVID to build an Ontario economy that is stronger than it was going into COVID. We have not stopped on that. As I just said, billions of dollars in economic activity, thousands of jobs are being created in the province of Ontario. We're cutting taxes for the lowest income Ontarians so that they can participate. We're putting billions of dollars investments into Northern Ontario because for far too long the North was ignored, Mr. Speaker. Now the opposition can continue to look backwards, Mr. Speaker. They can continue to forget about the economy. They can continue to forget about and vote against these investments that we're making. But we are looking forward because that's what the people of Ontario want. They want a stronger economy, and that's what we're doing every day, building a stronger, more prosperous Ontario.
The final supplementary.
Well, Speaker, Ontarians across this province right now are going to be shaking their heads after hearing that. Not even having the decency of having the Premier respond to the questions that Ontarians have about these very important issues. The very integrity of their government is at stake here, but they won't answer the questions. When the people of Ottawa needed help, the Premier sat on his hands. But when wealthy developers want to turn a profit on protected greenbelt land, suddenly the law was changed like that, right? Is this how our province works now? One set of rules for the Premier's friends and associates, and another for everyone else. Yeah, that's how it is.
Government House Leader.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, the way the province works is that a government, this government, is working every single day to build a more prosperous, strong Ontario, Mr. Speaker. And it's not just about the economy, right? In order to have a strong economy, you need a better healthcare system. We're building it. Billions of dollars of investments there. We needed a better education system. Our Minister of Education is doing that. The Minister of Energy, who inherited a file that was in chaos, has brought stability back to our system, Mr. Speaker, which has allowed the Minister of Economic Development and this Premier to bring thousands of jobs back to Ontario, billions of dollars of investments, Mr. Speaker. And the biggest part of that, too, Mr. Speaker, is that we're not ignoring the North. We're bringing them in to this, Mr. Speaker. At the same time, the Minister of Labour has been working very hard with our partners in Labour to ensure that all of these thousands of jobs that remain unfilled can be filled by the people of the province of Ontario, that they have the skills that they need to help us continue to build a more prosperous, stronger Ontario, a better Ontario than we inherited, and a stronger one than going into COVID.
Thank you very much. The next question, the member for Nickel Belt.
We're just listening into question period now at Queen's Park. NDP leader Marit Stiles speaking quite heavily against the Ford government.